Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Prep Talk podcast. I'm your host Vartika Bhandari.
Wait, you are the guest, Taarush. I am the host. Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Prep Talk podcast. I'm your host Vartika Bhandari, the real one. So today we have with us Taarush Grover, who is one of the cutest and one of the nicest person and student of Tutela, and he has got 35 on 36 in his ACT exam.
I also won the Dan Award.
Yeah, and he also got into Stanford. So I think the list would go on. We better start with the podcast, and I have a lot of questions for you.
Yeah.
So are you ready?
I'm ready.
Cool. So let's get started with your recent achievement, which is the Stanford acceptance.
Yeah.
How was the reaction of your parents, you, and your friends when you got to know that you got accepted into Stanford?
So the reaction was honestly something which is a priceless memory for me. Like this is something that happened on the 16th of December, early morning. I was supposed to wake up at 5:30. I slept through 7 alarms. Woke up at 7 o'clock. Finally, when I opened my acceptance letter, I did not expect anything. So I was just like opening it, like I was expecting to fall back asleep right after. I didn't expect that I was even gonna need to stay awake beyond say for the next 15 minutes after I got the letter. But obviously it was just a priceless moment for me, like opening it, seeing confetti, seeing the red logos glowing. And first of all, it took me like 3 minutes to process what had actually happened, because to me this is something that I'd worked for my entire life. So seeing all of that just accumulate into one letter was quite an emotional moment for me. More so after that, I was crying like anything. I was on the floor. I was just like, I was calling out, howling. Like I could not figure out how to respond appropriately. As far as like my parents and my family's reaction goes, my parents were actually not in town that day. So I had actually told them not to fly back because I didn't want them to like come and see a disappointing letter. So that was quite a counterintuitive thing that happened. And they also woke up at 5 o'clock for me while I was not awake. So they'd been awake almost the entire night in anticipation. So for them also, it was quite a relieving moment because obviously, like it is something which every parent also dreams of. So yeah,
So they were happy.
of course.
Yeah. And what about your peers? How did you break the news to them? How were their reactions?
Yeah.
And everything?
So I called up some of my friends, and first thing I called them on video call that very morning, and I didn't show my face. I turned the video camera around to flip it over to the acceptance letter thing, and then all I could hear on the other side was screaming,
Oh my
and it was the cutest thing ever. But yeah.
Absolutely. So, was Stanford in your priority list all this while, like when you were preparing and when you were planning all your admissions, or was it a surprise that you were not expecting and it happened?
So Stanford was my number one school since ninth grade.
Okay.
Yeah, it had been my dream school since forever and ever. Ever since I knew what the college process was all about.
Mhm.
So definitely number one forever. What I will say is that Stanford was my restrictive early action school, so I applied there early, and I got in early as well. So that was honestly why I had applied early, because it was my number one preference since forever. But yeah.
Alright. Oh my god, that must have been such a achievement in yourself.
Yeah.
That the school that you always dreamt of, you got into that.
Yeah,
That's nice. And how did your teachers also react? There is a lot of a role that a teacher plays in your life, building you academically, building your rigor, showing you what strengths you have, working on your weaknesses. How was the reaction of your school teachers and the teachers here at Tutela?
I think I had the most purest reaction from my teachers as well, especially like school teachers, Tutela teachers, like you mentioned. I think I called Sanskriti ma'am that very morning and I told her what had happened. And she was also screaming, like she sent me like a dozen voice messages after that, just telling me how proud she was of me and like how far I've come from when she got to know me at the beginning of 11th grade to finally like mid 12th grade, almost end of 12th grade. So she had also witnessed my entire journey throughout. And for that matter, even my high school teachers, like most of them had taught me throughout 11th grade and 12th grade. and even a lot of teachers who had known me from before, they really, like, even in school when I went back after for my exams and all that, I met a lot of teachers who had taught me previously, and I understood, like, they all came and told me about how much I had meant to them in class, and like the kind of person I was, which I didn't see myself as at the time, but they saw that in me, which I could not see in myself. So that was something which was quite a peaceful and also like very positive moment for me, because I got to know how my teachers felt about me, the which I didn't know how I felt about myself. And yeah, I got the purest reaction from a lot of my high school teachers who are currently like my subject teachers, like previously when I was in high school, my subject teachers as well. So that was also very nice.
That's great. That's great to know. So you also won Diana Award. You also won the UN Award, and there were a lot of awards that you have won in the process of the entire, from starting your prep and then getting into Stanford. So, okay, I just wanted to understand a bit about Diana Award because it's a big deal. So, how does a student get into it? How does a student qualify for the eligibility to receive the award? And actually, two students from Tutela itself got that, you and Agastya. Right. So, what was the entire process, and a little bit about the award? We'd like to know.
Yeah, so I'll just dial back a little bit from the award to talk about my organization for which I received the award. So I run this organization throughout high school. I ran the organization called Vilanity. So it was basically a social organization where we imparted non-academic education to underprivileged students across India through a digital learning management system platform that I had created over 11th grade and 12th grade time. So I think the main thing in the Diana Award is really showing how you've created impact for the community that you belong to. That could be, for example, a small community. That could be something as small as an individual. Maybe if you changed an individual's life to an extent that they are now doing far better than they would have without your help, that is also something where you've created impact. So I think the word impact, although used as a buzzword a couple of times, has so much weightage in the entire process, because the Diana Award Committee and every other social entrepreneurship award committee for that matter wants to see how you've really created a difference in your community. So for me, for example, I had about I had some thousands of students involved in my entire journey with Vilanity, and they were across I think about tens of villages or something like that. And basically, I think my main aspect where I was able to really impact their lives was through my volunteers in high school and the universities that I had partnered with. And it was sort of like a channelizing system where I was able to reach more people through a network of volunteers that I had built. So I think just talking about the Diana Award specifically, I think the thing has to be a nomination. You can't apply as an individual. You can't, like, I think you can nominate yourself, but I think it is better if you have somebody who is a credible resource who nominates you for the award. I believe you need three people in your backing. One is your nominee, one is your nominator, one is the person who backs up your profile, who is basically somebody who writes about possibly somebody who has used your resources or somebody who has benefited from your work, who writes about you, and then third is somebody who verifies the entire thing. So I think the number one thing to do is to identify the individual who will be your nominee. This is somebody you want who has really closely worked with you throughout the entire process, possibly a mentor in your journey. So that is who I picked for myself, my mentor with social entrepreneurship. He's the one who wrote my Diana Award nomination form. And I think he was able to really bring out my true voice and what my aim was with the entire organization. What I will say is that have a conversation with your nominator to really sit down and understand the why behind things and why you did what you did in social entrepreneurship. Because this is again something which is very important, because anybody who's working in a particular sector, especially in the social fields, needs to understand why they're doing what they're doing. So for me, for example, the non-academic part was more so driven from the fact that I used to volunteer a lot in 10th grade and 11th grade, and also largely in 9th grade during COVID times. And really, I understood the fact that a lot of organizations that I worked for, they didn't have adequate non-academic learning resources. So that could be dance, drama, design, music, theater, anything along those lines. So I personally saw the entire journey of my own journey and how non-academics impacted me deeply in building the person that I was. So I felt like if I was able to provide that similar an opportunity to people who are also in a growing field, I would be able to impact their lives a lot as well. So like that is my why. So understanding that and communicating that to your nominator and to the Diana Award committee was, I think, where a lot of the tangent lied, and that is what worked well for me.
All right.
So, yeah.
And that was a great achievement amongst all. So, all the other awards that you've received was for the same cause that you were working for, or were there any other projects also that you were doing along with the organization that you were handling?
So largely, a lot of my social entrepreneurship awards were for Volanity itself, because that is what I try to focus my that's where I try to focus my aim towards throughout high school. Some of my awards are for like my artwork and all that stuff, but yeah.
Nice. You were into arts. I was into arts. I love.
Really?
Yeah, I used to study fine arts, so I'm also into arts a lot. I used to do. I had got commerce, and I was not good at math at all. So I had to take fine arts, which was always in my mind. And whatever I do, I need to take fine arts.
Yeah.
And I was always an artistic student. So I painted walls at my home and everything. So yeah, that's like escape, During COVID also, it was so hectic. So I used to paint walls at my home.
Yeah.
And not like aise kuch bhi kar diya type. It was really nice. So yeah, it calms you down, the art side of everything, be it music or be dance or anything. It just something is different in the art of it.
No, totally. Yeah.
You know? So if you talk about the different elements, that of creating a good profile. So there we have extracurriculars. You obviously have to take care of your academics in priority. Then you have extra standardized tests. You also have different projects and internships that you're doing in the organization that you said you were working on. So a lot of time goes inside doing and maintaining all of this stuff. What was your go-to time management strategy, and how did you manage everything? Like taking care of your standardized tests where you scored so well, also taking care of academics, right? And then also working on your organization, receiving the Diana Award, then extracurricular, so many things. How did you manage everything and checked all the boxes out of your profile?
I think what you have to do in this entire college process of I'm going to say give or take 2 years, because 11th and 12th grade is where you really max out your entire college application.
Right.
I'd say the number one thing is keeping everything in the same boat, but prioritizing as and when the need comes. So for example, if I have exams coming in the next 2 months, my social organization takes a backseat, in my personal opinion. I have people on the back end who are going to manage it for me while I am giving my exams. So I think that was one thing which prioritization really made a difference in, because I was able to keep everything continuously going simultaneously, but at given particular points in time, I was prioritizing certain things. So for example, if I had, like I said, exams coming up, or if I had, say for example, my ACT attempt coming up, for at least 15 days to 20 days before my ACT attempt, I was coming to Tutela every day, giving FLTs, attending review sessions, finding out where my problem lies, creating documents about how I could really improve, and also really identifying what kind of questions I faltered in. So all these kind of things, and also like mapping your entire timeline is very important. Like I'd say, if you're, say for example, in 11th grade right now, or even at the beginning of 12th grade, or even say for example a 10th grader, really mapping out how you want to spend your time on a month by month basis, on a week by week basis. If you're in 12th grade, it really goes a really long way, because then you're really helping yourself prioritize, okay, this week this is what I want to do. So this is actually a concept called hyper prioritization. So I follow that in a lot of realms. So on a day-to-day basis, it's called hyper prioritization. On a weekly basis, it's called hyper prioritization, and on a monthly, it's just prioritization. So you need to do that for your activities throughout high school, and this is something that a lot of top CEOs also follow, which really helps them also break down their 100 things that they have to do on a daily basis. So I'd say that is your number one thing. As far as the day-to-day prioritization goes, after school, I'd say the most important thing which teenagers really falter in right now, including myself, like I have been victim to this as well, is the dopamine loss that we have with Instagram, with Snapchat, WhatsApp, all these kind of things. So exactly. So right now, the most important thing which I used to do when I used to get out of school is either I used to sleep in the bus or sleep in the way on the car back on the car ride home, or I used to just between tuition classes sleep. Just even if it's not sleeping, it's just shutting your brain off from any kind of stimuli, which really helps because you want to reset your focus onto the next thing that you're doing. People think that relaxing means opening Instagram. No, that is not relaxation. That is just stimulating your mind with something else before jumping between two actually stimulating things, which might be academics or might be something that you're going to like an extracurricular activity, or like say for example a music class. So what you really want to do is shut off between the periods that you're working. And I think that works really well because you're able to then also, I think one more important thing, especially with academics, which I took some time to understand, but eventually understood, is the fact that once you've garnered some information, it is not about getting that information, it is about storing that information. So those neuron connections are made after you've learned it. When you're learning, your active neurons are communicating, but that storing of information happens afterwards. So giving yourself that rest time, more so that sleep as well, because I know a lot of high schoolers, including myself, were on less than 4 hours of sleep a night for most of our nights. And I think that is very normal, because not normal that it is to be promoted, but normal in the sense that it lands up happening. So I think sleeping and taking breaks in the middle is so vital in this entire process. I would say also prioritization wise, academics should be a number one priority throughout. Academics and SAT and ACT and APs also for that matter. So for example, right now we're sitting in April, APs are in May. If you're a 12th grader right now, your extracurriculars can potentially take a little bit of a backseat, and you should focus on your APs right now if you are giving them, that is.
Right.
So yeah.
Very well structured answer, I would say.
Thank you.
Because I've asked this question to a lot of people, and yes, they've answered, but you have structured it in a way that I think students would understand this for sure, and relate to as well, of course. So my next question is that you took ACT, right? So there are two standardized tests, as we all know. And there's SAT and there's ACT, and both of them have their own things, weaknesses and strengths, right? So what made you choose ACT over SAT? Because we see a lot of students opting for SAT more when, if we get into stats, that more SAT test takers are there than ACT.
Yeah.
What made you choose ACT over SAT?
So I think the number one factor that really played a part in this was actually Tutela's diagnostic that I gave. So when I joined Tutela very early on, this was 11th grade beginning, I took the diagnostic that you guys had, and I really got a really good idea from that because my ACT aptitude was much higher than my SAT aptitude. Having said that, I think the most important factor to consider, which I think you may agree or disagree with me on this, is the fact that time management versus the degree of questions that you want, right? So ACT is all about the speed, it's about the agility of the mind in test taking. It's not so much about the difficulty of questions. On the contrary, the SAT is a little bit more about the difficulty of questions rather than the test taking ability. I think one more thing that played in my mind when this whole thing was factoring out was the fact that the SAT was going digital at the time. So I wasn't too sure how I would be comfortable with that, or how I would adapt to that. Because I would have studied because this is what happened I think December of 11th grade, it was going digital. So I didn't want that I would study for 6 months in a physical SAT class and then switch to digital SAT and have to study again. So I think that was another factor that really played on my mind. But having said that, I think the time duration in the present case scenario, which is that the SAT is for 2 hours and the ACT is for 3 hours, also plays a role in the entire process of defining which one you want to take. I think a lot of kids do go for the SAT because it's just shorter in the time constraint. For me, also, like the ACT having to sit for 3 hours was a bit of a stretch. It took me some time to really assess how I was able to do that. And obviously, it was a difficult process. I think took me close to 10-15 FLTs to just come close to sitting comfortable for 3 hours and giving the test. So I think all those things do play into role.
Right. And you also give 2 attempts, right? Which is a standard attempt number that a student gives.
Yeah.
So what made you go ahead with 2, and you also had a good jump, right, from your previous score to the 35 that you achieved in your second attempt? What all things that you incorporated giving the attempt in the first go, and then you made sure that these mistakes probably are not doing the second one, and what all things were there that you learned from the first attempt and incorporated in the second one?
I think the most important thing is the fact that between the 2 attempts, I had 2 to 3 months, and for some odd reason, I was able to first attempt. I was not able to properly assess what I was doing. Now, this goes to say that when I was giving the test, also, like I was maxing out at maybe like a 31, 32, 33, right? I wasn't going above that in my FLT exams. And when I went to the test center and I gave the test, the atmosphere of the test center, especially the Delhi test center, was very different from what Tutela offered, in the sense that because I was not able to understand, like, okay, there's this cubicle that is here, and there's like the multiple people, like close to 50 to 100 people in that room who are giving the test with me. The lighting is separate. There's a person who's talking in the background. There's somebody who's coughing. There's somebody, all those things. Although Tutela did a very good job in preparing me for like the human factors, in terms of like people, like just the fact that there are people coughing, there will be people moving, there will be chairs creaking, all those noises will be there. But still, having done that with Tutela, I still felt that the test center scenario was a little bit different, because also along with that, the test anxiety is there, right? So, for example, in when I was giving my FLTs here, that test anxiety was not there because it was a familiar environment. But on the contrary, getting to the actual exam center was an unfamiliar environment for me. So that itself had such an impact on me, especially the fact that I'm in back of my mind, I was playing that, okay, you know what, 2 attempts is the max that you can give. So that pressure was also there. So I'd say multiple things played a role in determining the fact that first attempt did not go well. Second attempt, I'd say I was well versed with how the actual scenario plays out in reality. Also, the stress management aspect was very different. If here I messed up, like in an FLT, and I was not able to maintain my time well on in like a particular section or something like that, it was relatively okay, because tomorrow I would be able to re-give the test and fix that. In the actual exam, the kind of problems that play in your mind are that, okay, this is the 35 minutes. What if I am at 28 minutes now and I still have 15 questions left? And then the panic sets in, because you don't have a tomorrow to give the test again, right? So multiple factors played into part, and I landed up scoring approximately 2 to 3 points under what I would get in a normal FLT exam in the center. So I think that all played a role. The second reason why I wanted to give the second attempt was because super scoring, which is something that most universities do accept. I think I scored well in like 1 or 2 sections in my first attempt, and the other 2 sections, like I said, I ran out of time or I wasn't comfortable doing. I think that is the main factor as well. Also, I think one more thing that people should consider is that not every attempt, all sections have equal strength. Like some sections are a little easier, some sections are more difficult. So, for example, I remember in my first attempt, the math section was super easy, the English section was super easy, reading was very difficult, and science was also very difficult. So, for me, really understanding that, okay, these 2 sections have gone bad, now in my second attempt, I will get more focus on them because my first 2 sections are relatively sorted, was also another reason. And I think second attempts, your pressure is relatively lesser because you've been through the entire process once. And I think also, like, the fact is that most people do land up getting 1 or 2 sections done and dusted for in the first attempt. So then second attempt, they can focus on what their weaknesses are.
That's a good practice. I think you cannot expect a student to get 36 out of 36, for that matter 35 out of 36 in the first attempt.
Yeah.
Because there are so many unforeseen things that you go through, and there are so many hurdles that you go through during the exam day. So I think super scoring is a very good option for students, and it has helped a lot of students.
Yeah.
And it's a good thing that people can, students can focus on few things at a time. Because it gets overwhelming.
It does.
I need to stop saying Hindi words.
No, it does get overwhelming.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think also, like, I think most universities do land up accepting super scoring. I think there's a list of maybe a couple of handful of universities which don't. And I think for that, I think it's very comfortable to super score, and I would recommend it to people.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's a good practice. So, what about your college essay?
Yeah.
What question did you get? How did you prepare it?
Yeah.
You get a question, right?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. We'll cut this out. Okay. So, what question did you get, and how did you prepare it? How much time did you take to write the entire thing? And I'm sure it must have been some piece of art because obviously the college that you got into accepts nothing less. Right. So, how was the entire process of writing college essay? Because college essay is something that, once a student, once a student plan that okay, I need to go abroad for education, the first scare that I have is about college essay. I need to write about myself, which is I this day and age students are not into introspection that much. We see a lot of because of social media and a lot of things. So, how was the entire process of writing the essay for you?
So the essay writing process was, like you said, something which was very new and absurd to any high schooler who's entering it. I started around this time last year, so approximately April to May is when I started thinking about the essay process. I was in the ISC board, which is the Indian education system. So for us, like, it's not exactly promoted to like the self-talk and the retrospection that IB kids do tend to have sometimes. That is why sometimes IB tends to have a level up in terms of the self-introspection process, like you mentioned. What I will say is the number one thing that I did was basically really sit with myself and understand who I was as an individual. I mapped out approximately 7,000 words of my life. So it took me about a week or 2 weeks. So I sat down and I was really figuring out, okay, this is what happened. This is my core memory from year one. This is my core memory from year two, year three, whatever I was able to garner. And I think also another very big part was talking to my parents, talking to my grandparents, talking to people who I love, talking to people who have impacted me in my life throughout the whole journey, people who've really played a role. I think that really made a difference because, like, it's so common to say that you're a net product of the 5 people around you, right? So who are the people you've lived with your entire life? That could even be your siblings for that matter. How they have played a detrimental or a positive impact on you. Like, that's totally how you look at it, right? I'd say the number one thing for any high schooler to do when starting with the college process is sit with yourself. Most people in today's day would want to sit in their vacation between the summer break and between the change of term, which is basically March to April. You have a lot of time, school is going easy. Sit with yourself, have introspection sessions. I used to sit with myself for hours and hours at an extent, think about what kind of abstract concepts am I interested in, what is my true concept, what is my true calling, what is my ikigai, all these kind of things I used to think about. Because whatever said and done, this is not something that anybody else can bring out for you. And the earlier you understand who you are as an individual, it really helps you lead the entire college process rather than be a bystander for it. Because you want your true and original voice to come out through the entire process, right? And that will only come out when you know what your original voice is. Otherwise, you'll be writing your essays and you'll be lost midway because you wouldn't know what you would do in that particular situation. So understanding who you are, how you act in certain situations, how the universe has shaped who you are, how you in turn hope to shape the universe. These are questions which you should think about, have answers to before you start the college process, before you start the essay writing process. And I think one more very big factor for me was, so I wrote my Common App essay beforehand, in the sense that I started off with that as my first essay because I wanted my strongest suit, my strongest story to come across in my Common App essay, and then everything else would follow after in the supplemental essays that colleges offer. So for me, the Common App essay was something that I had nearly 7 to 8 drafts for. I thought over that a couple of times. I started off with 3,000 words, brought it down to 650 eventually after a really long time. But yeah, so it's a whole process. That's why, like, I say this to everybody, start as early as you can, because the more time you give yourself for the entire process, the better the outcome will be. Because you wake up one fine morning, you reread your essay, and you're like, okay, that doesn't sound like me, right? And then you pick out an individual sentences, and you're like, okay, this does not make sense to me. I've written it, it's jargon, it does not make sense to me. This is also does not make sense to me. So these kind of things you have to yourself track, because again, there may be external people who can help you with the process, but then again, unless you have your idea of how you sound, they can only add words to it. They cannot frame it for you. They cannot actually write the content for you. So I think that is a very big thing. About the supplemental essays, I think another very important thing which I like doing, which really helped me through the entire process, was understanding what are the abstract concepts that I'm really interested in. So, for example, I was really interested in synesthesia as a concept. So, synesthesia is basically when you have these intersensory connections, and synesthesia is a concept that many individuals have. So, you can have chromesthesia, you can have other kinds of synesthesia. As a concept, I was really interested in that and how that could be used to potentially help people who have lost their ability of sight or lost their ability of taste or something like that, and how we can introduce that as a concept. So I wanted to do research on that at a higher education level as well. So that is something that I spoke about in my essays, because I wanted to show what kind of individual I would be at their university. What is my niche? Where will I find my one of one niche at their university of geniuses? So because I wanted to show that, okay, this is me, this is what I offer, this is what I intend to do, this is my life goal, this is what I come as a backing with to prove to you that I'm credible enough to attend your university. So I think multiple things played a part in that. And also showing your quirkiness, your individuality was a very massive part, especially for Stanford, because they really, really value that. They have about 8 essays in the entirety of their supplemental set. And a lot of them are just short answer questions where you have to talk about tiny snippets from your life. They don't even have to be about you. They can just be about concepts that you're interested in, or historical factors that you're really interested in, or maybe just cool things about you that you want to communicate with the admissions officer.
Right. That shows what kind of a personality you have.
Yeah.
What have you worked on all these years,
Yeah.
and to see you 5 years down the line or 4 years down the line once you've completed the college, what kind of a human being you will become.
Exactly.
Maybe the supplement essays after that.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think, like I said, dialing back to the why, right? So I think identifying your why in the entire process is so vital, because you want to understand that, okay, my why is my base. It's the trunk of my tree, right? How can I branch off from my why? Because your core has to be so strong that it doesn't shake. And that is what the university wants to see. How your very true self comes across in every part of your application. So it makes a cohesive story in entirety only when the trunk is strong. So I think that is what I like saying to people as part of their application process, and well, in general as well, is that identify what your why is, right? One more thing I will say for the college process is that give yourselves a lot of time. Even for supplemental essays, I had nearly 6 to 7 drafts for each of them, because I wanted to dedicate that time. I wanted to have that conversation with my admissions officer through my essays. And for that, I also took time to understand what the university had to offer above and beyond just the name and the tag that it offered, right? I wanted to understand what clubs were there, what kind of resources the university had, the professors, what they taught. I wanted to see where the university stands as comparison to others, and how they are better in certain things and how they aren't. I wanted to understand the ins and outs of the place, because I have to consider it. As in, like, anybody who's applying has to consider it in a way that they are going to attend the next 4 years of their life there. Are they really going to attend 4 years of their life there for the prestige, or do they actually have things which they're interested in at that university that are going to drive their curiosity throughout, right? So I think that is also a very important part of the application, because it really shows that you have made the effort to understand the place which you want to dedicate the next 4 years of your life to.
I think this is one of the things, students drive away with, that they always go behind the name of the college, Ivy Leagues and everything. But is the college right for you?
Yeah.
What you want to do? So that is one thing that, is missing from the research that students do. And they also, so this all comes with, self-analyzing and everything, and you need to understand what your goals are in life. And if that college, it can be the greatest college in the world, but then if that college is not right for you, it's not right for you.
Exactly.
No matter how prestigious the college is, right?
Exactly.
So this is somewhere I have seen in students that they're very driven with the name of the college. Yeah, that is something students should know and research more about. It's really
Absolutely.
important.
Yeah.
So okay, talking about the entire admission process. So there were a lot of things, and we've sort of talked about all the small elements that goes inside. How seamless the process was for you, and what are the things that you made sure that are prim and proper before you send out your application to the colleges?
So now we're talking more about like the October, September kind of time, which is before your ED or REA for that matter.
Yeah.
I would say number one thing that you should make sure is your spellings. I think it's such an important part of the application and so overlooked sometimes, because you need to understand, if you're applying to American universities, Indians tend to study in the British curriculum, especially if you're on the national boards like the ISC or CBSE board. So you would potentially be writing in British English.
Right.
Don't do that. Write in American English, because you want to communicate with your admissions officer. You want to, again, it's all part of the effort, right? It's every little part of your application shows how much effort you've put in, which indirectly correlates to how much you want to be there. If you like take care of your spellings, if you take care of your grammar, it just goes a level above to show that okay, this kid has done the basics here because he wants to come here. On the contrary, if you don't, then it just goes to show that okay, this kid is maybe not lacking the actual, I don't know, the want to come here. So I think that's a very big aspect. Second thing, in terms of application perfection, I would use the word here. I'd say your academics have to be prim and proper throughout. Like, you cannot falter on your academics throughout 9th to 12th grade, because it goes as your transcript and it eventually becomes your 12th grade predicted scores as well, which the school offers. So I think academics are a very crucial part of the entire application. Third thing I would say is what do you say, sort of like a theme that your application has to follow. Theme as in, again, bringing out your why throughout every single part of the application. You have to scream through every part of the application process, and your application which you send in entirety. Your essays have to scream that, your extracurriculars have to scream that, what you've done throughout high school has to scream that, your LORs from your teachers have to scream that. So every part of your application should scream the same answer, which is your why, and that comes across when you start early, like I mentioned. So as far as application perfection goes at the absolute last stages, I'd say if you can go over your application in entirety, because on the Common App you can download the PDF, go over your application in entirety, sit with your parents, sit with anybody else who you worked with in the past, and understand, is any part of the application sounding a little disoriented from the rest of the part. That could be the way that you frame your extracurricular activities on the Common App, right? The kind of action words you use, the kind of the kind of way that you describe your activities also. All of that makes such an impact in your entire process, because I can describe a STEM plus art activity in a very STEM oriented way, in a very art oriented way. So that's just a really basic example of how you can use the same activity in two different ways, right? So understand, relate it to your major, relate your activities to everything. So I think it all has to cohesively tell a story. So I think that's the most important part.
Right. Very well said. So, who has been your inspiration all this while to work so hard and to always be so driven?
Yeah.
And there are times when we face hurdles and we kind of stop.
Yeah.
We don't want to do anything. We procrastinate. So there has to be some solid inspiration that keeps you going, keeps on going. So what inspiration that has been for you?
So I think the number one driver in this entire process has been my parents. Like through and through, like they've always supported what I wanted to pursue professionally. They've always supported the kind of extracurriculars I wanted to do. They've always supported like just my learnings through the entire process. Because for me, like I'm the elder child, so for me, understanding the process was simultaneously going on as I was going through the process. So it is not that I knew what I had to do at every step of the way. It was a lot about understanding, doing. So that back and forth is something that my parents were also a very big part of, because as Indian parents, for the first time sending their kid abroad, it is a very new process to them compared to, say, for example, the CUET or JEE exams which India offers, right? So for the US applications, every little thing counts, right? So understanding how to map that entire thing, how to navigate the entire thing, was something that they really stood by me with for. And I think one more aspect that really drove me in the difficult times that you were talking about was the fact that I as a ninth grader, I had really thought, in fact, not even as a ninth grader, as a little kid, I had really forever wanted to do something in the field of art and design. Right, that was my niche, that was my ikigai, that was my why, like I mentioned. So I think just driving back to that kid and really working for that kid is what really helped me through the entire process, because every time I would like waver, I would be like, okay, why am I doing all of this? It would just drive back to that little kid and be like, okay, it's his dream that you're pursuing, not your own, right? So this is in fact something that I learned from somebody, is the fact that every time you sort of lose your path, refer back to a time where you knew you used to dream about your goal, right? And another thing I used to do was introspect on how far I've come, because I think it's a very, very important and crucial part of not getting lost in the process. Because for example, me in 11th grade would be so me in 10th grade would be so proud of the me in 11th grade, who would again be so proud of the me in 12th grade, right? So telling yourself that how far you've come in the span of even a year or even a month for that matter, right? The amount of progress you've made on a monthly basis is really a good way to keep yourself sane and in track of what you have to do and how far you have to get. Because there will of course be pressure from family, there will be pressure from teachers, everything, everybody, academic pressure, social pressure, everything comes into play, right? But at the end of the day, you have to understand you're a one-man army in these kind of things, right? You have to understand that, okay, whatever I'm doing for myself. That is your learning, or like that should be your mantra for the next 4 years if you're starting in ninth grade, which is that whatever I'm doing for myself, right? So that should be your pushing mechanism, not that I'm doing this for somebody else, not that somebody else is pushing me to do it, that's why I'm doing this. If that is your case, then that's a totally different understanding. But for me, it was all about I'm doing this for myself, right? And other people have also invested their time, their effort, their money into getting me to where I want to be, right? So for me, it is also about valuing their time and effort and their money. So all of these factors really pushed me ahead whenever I was lost in the process. But yeah.
That's so sweet. I mean, every answer you give, I'm just thinking, my God, is he really 18 years old? He has so much of wisdom, my God. Very well said. I mean, I'll just listen to this podcast myself. I'll be the audience of my own podcast. This is amazing. I'm just thinking, you have to be so solid at your roots to have this kind of knowledge and actually implementing that. I was just thinking, what was I doing when I was 18? Crazy. When I see students now, there are two kinds. Okay, one is just extreme. Both are extremes. Like there is you who's so driven. When I'm talking to you, I understand with each question why you want to Stanford. My God. And then there's some kind, have no idea what they want to do. They're just following a path, as you said. Somebody has told you to do this, you're doing this. But then there's the driven ones, self-driven ones. As you said, doing it for yourself. And I'll actually use this mantra of yours that I'll just think about myself, 3 years down the line, where was I? And I'll just work for myself, for the little self, as you said. So, okay, moving on to the last question. And how was your experience at Tutela?
Yeah.
Because if I keep on asking you the questions, it will not end.
Yeah.
So we'll just end at this point. That how was your entire experience at Tutela? You have been here for the
2+ years.
Yeah, the longest time I can remember. So you are equally matching my experience here at Tutela. So yeah, how was it, and how were the teachers? I see a great bond you have with all the teachers, like Sanskriti, Somendra, and everybody, right? So it's sort of a family that I see when I see teachers with students, because my work is completely separate. I don't interact with students that much. But when I see, teachers involved like a parent with all the students, it feels so nice.
Yeah.
But because of the career choices I made, that is not actually what happens. But then I get to talk to students like this. So how was your experience entirely at Tutela?
So I joined Tutela in the beginning of 11th grade. That is for my ACT/SAT exam, which I was going to give. So for me, I think the very get-go, I sort of understood the fact that there was going to be a lot of one-on-one in this entire process. It was not crash commercialized at all. I felt a very strong bond, even with Ashish sir for that matter, even with Shinjay sir for that matter. Like, I would call him up just to like ask him about, okay, like different parts of the application, because like I said, you don't know what you don't know, right? And he was so reciprocative and understanding of the fact that I didn't know how the process goes, right? So he would teach me the very basics of, okay, why standardized testing is even important for that matter, because me as an incoming 11th grader had no idea. So I think like what you said, the family vibe here is exceptional. And above and beyond that, I think I initially joined with another teacher in Tutela. She had left, but then when I was transferred to Sanskriti ma'am, I think the whole system totally changed, because Sanskriti ma'am used to scold me like a parent. She used to teach me like a parent. She used to like literally handhold and also hold my ear at the same time. So I think both of those things are so important in the whole grooming process, because as a student, you don't know what you're doing, right? Sometimes you just waver because you're not sure what the end goal of this is, right? So reinstating that end goal of, okay, this really does help you. Standardized testing is a very big part of your application process. It is something that you need to do. It is not just something that you're doing for fun, was a very important thing which all the teachers at Tutela kept reinstating. For me personally, my math at some point, like towards the end chapters, was a little weaker, right? So Sumendra sir really sat me down. He helped me with classes. He helped me outside of classes between his break times, and he really sat with me and helped me understand those concepts in entirety. I would come to him with like questions marked sometimes, and sometimes he would go above and beyond that to explain the concept. Like if I would come to him with one question, I would leave that table having discussed a concept. So I think that is a very big part of what Tutela has to offer as well. And I think more so going above and beyond the teachers, I think just the whole infrastructure here, which is so student friendly and so student cohesive. Like I know the door password, by the way, so I can walk in anytime. I think the door password hasn't changed in forever. So like that just goes to show as a testament to how student friendly the entire atmosphere is, right? And that could be, for example, like I used to come here after school sometimes. I used to do my school homework as well here sometimes. Just stay here the entire day, do ACT work towards the end of the day. Maybe like just do an FLT or do like a sectional with Sanskriti ma'am. Like, just different things I would do here. And I never felt alienated in this environment. I always felt like I was welcome here, which is a very big aspect as well, because my school is right around the corner. So I would just walk here anytime.
I've seen students more in their school uniforms here than in normal wear.
Exactly.
Like how dedicated you have to be.
Exactly.
You have to be for the kind of aim that you're planning or the paths that you're choosing. If you're not dedicated towards that goal, it's likely possible that you won't achieve it to that extent.
Yeah. So I think like just talking about like the actual nitty-gritties of the thing, like the Tutela teaching system was very nice for me as well, because they gave you guys gave a manual which was basically like a question answer booklet, and it's not about actually answering the questions. It was more so about understanding why I got certain things wrong and how to improve them, right? So it's a curve. It's about giving the questions, getting them wrong, understanding why they were wrong, and improving them, and then again not making the same mistake the next time. So I think that circular process is something which Tutela understands really, really well, and has like imbibed in every single route of questioning that they do, which is that understanding how to not make the mistake again, right? And I think that is what really helped me improve my score in such a short time span as well. I think that's a very important thing for me. Even something as simple as the ACT resources online and even the portal that is there, the digital portal, which is so adaptive, right? Although I personally didn't have too much because I didn't know about it for a long time, but I saw my score improve by 2 to 3 points, even in a span of 2 months when I started using the portal. And also, it's so fun, like it's gamified. So
Yeah.
I never felt like I was working. Like I would take breaks from my like school academics and then focus on this. So I think all of that small things, it developed in a really interesting way, all create a very nice impact. So yeah.
Feels really nice to hear that. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for doing this. It was such a fun podcast. I swear I could have gone for more questions, but yeah, we are on a time constraint. And I think you answered them really well. And if students plan on listening this, uh, they are going to get so many insights and takeaways from this particular podcast, and I think it'll be a hit because you are going crazy on our LinkedIn when we posted your congratulations post. I don't know, they're your followers, they're our followers. They have never been so supportive. All of them are congratulating you left, right, and center. I'm like, oh my god, Taarush is going popular on our LinkedIn. So yeah, that has been great, and all the best for your future.
Thank
for
you so
Stanford. Do send us stories and do let us know how it is all panning out for you. And
Yeah.
all the best.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, it's been a pleasure.
Same here.